Yes, my name is Akutra Ramses Atenosis Cea, and I have a master's degree in technology leadership. And growing up, the very first job that I held was a software coder, software developer. Well, I grew up traveling around. My parents were a little eccentric. They got like a Silverstream trailer, and we traveled around all the United States and even in Europe. So I'd say the positive of that was that I got to see Europe, although it was on a low budget, right? So it wasn't the most ideal way to see Europe, I would have to say. But the negative was that it was hard to make long-term friends. A lot of shorter term relationships that, I might reach out to them a little bit, but they're like in Europe or they're in other cities, and so it's just harder to maintain relationships long distance like that. When I was growing up, I wanted to be an architect. So I actually really enjoyed writing things out. So I would write a lot of, not so much stories, but I would write out descriptions of things, like technical documents. I used to, when I was in grade school, I was head of the class, and so they would allow me to leave the classroom and go play for several hours every day, just about pretty much every day. And so I would go out and I would be all by myself outside because all the other children were in the classroom. And I would just go out and I actually would tell myself a story. That's how I would play by myself. And so, that does actually play a little bit into the idea of writing a book, now that I think about it, yeah. Well, the inspiration came from my dream life, a lot of my dream life, and a few events in my life. Some of it came from, my experience when I opened my mind's eye or my third eye, and what I was able to see when I did that. And so what I could see from my mind's eye, was a lot of inspiration to the elements in the story. So these are things that a lot of people don't normally see, and so there's a lot of little intricate things that are from the real world that some people may be able to see. Well, it didn't play all that much. The technical expertise helped me write out his character as a video game developer, right? And the scene where he was doing computer contracting and other things of that nature. And it also helped me because I was very technical as a child, writing out descriptions of various games and other things that I like to develop. And so, that kind of plays into everything. It's hard to say the impact of that, but it's kind of interwoven really into the whole underlying story. The underlying fundamentals of the story are like built into the story are different mechanics that we have not yet fully explored. Like quantum entanglement is interwoven into the story, and events in the story are based upon, various aspects of what could occur in certain cases with the concepts of quantum entanglement and the interaction with different elements like the multiverse. Interwoven under the story is like Mark as a video game developer and other elements in the story are suggesting that they are actually creating the multiverse themselves. And it doesn't really come out and say that, but that is kind of part of the underlying currents of the story. Well, again, like when I was talking about him as a video game developer, that was because a video game developer, he's a designer, not just a coder. And so basically he's kind of creating worlds. And so that leads into the whole underlying factor of the multiverse that's being invented. He is basically creating worlds. And it also allowed me to create a twist in the story because he has an innate ability in the story to connect remotely via quantum entanglement. It's kind of embedded in him. And so he is, throughout the underlying currents of the story, he is trying to connect to our world, and he's in an alternate world. And it allowed me kind of twisted plot. So when he creates the video game has cities in the United States, whereas in his world, they are the alternate. It's an alternate reality. So his world is not our world, but the video game is that he's creating. That's because he's trying to connect to our world. Yeah, like I said in the previous question, I have had an event where I opened my third eye, and I've had it for a while, and I use it occasionally, and so that just added inspiration to the story, and I thought it would be a cool, interesting twist to add, to have the protagonist actually have a third eye and be able to use it. I didn't want to make it the focus of the story, but I wanted to make it part of his origin character as a, I don't know if I'd call him a superhero, but as an enlightened being. Well, the book has a lot of elements in it. So it's a short story, but it's actually really packed with a lot of details. So there's a lot of really good scenes. And I definitely am considering creating a much larger novel out of the whole story. But the main thing that I was thinking about was a very exciting moment. If you want to say exciting moment, it would be where Garrick discovers Ramses' daughter. And the beings from the other world that have kind of invaded this world inadvertently, and this is primarily because Mark has this hyperconnective ability that actually made the connection. They are like this black mist, and when they come into that world, they leave everything with this little black film all around when they kind of reside there. And so Garrick is exploring a house that has this black mist all over it, and he has a light gun that he uses to illuminate it because he can't see anything. It's so black, and it kind of plays a little bit on the fears of what's in the dark, right? Because he is also a little bit worried. He has a little bit of fear on the idea that there could be aliens in the dark, because these are aliens to them. They're from another world. And so he's very trepidatious. And as he approaches the door, as he opens the door of the house, which is so black, there's a dog, and that just like, it starts barking, but the dog is caged. So there's actually no interaction there. And then he discovers Ramses' daughter, which was one of the missing persons. And that was an extremely exciting moment as I wrote him creeping towards the house. And it was very, it could be a little bit terrifying, in a way. Well, the process of writing Spidersilk was more the creation of the story was less about writing, less about the typing on the. It was kind of like, in my childhood I'd tell myself stories. So, I basically just sat and worked out the plot line, worked out the characters and how they would deal with everything. And then when I sat down to write it, it was just like race to the finish line. It just came out real fast. But the whole story, creation of the story, took like a year, and then there was additional refinement after that. Well, actually, I built into the story a lot of edifices that are basically designed to hopefully make someone pay attention to, details and signs in their own life of what they might be seeing, and hopefully view a little bit into the fabric of the universe that makes up their own universe. And also, little things like, be careful what you connect to, but never ever worry. But you should always try to make connections to others. Spidersilk, the only hope for Spidersilk is that it is a story that helps people really ponder and consider what is coming for us as we develop quantum entanglement, what could be, and as a classic, maybe like a cult classic novel. It does not need to be the most popular novel or anything. It could be one of those artifacts that somebody finds and says, "What is this?" It doesn't have to be the biggest of the budgets, but it's just a little bit of mind expansion and a little bit of sci-fi all rolled up into a little bit of reality. I always thought that it would be on the big screen. Originally, when I was writing it, I was like, this would make a good sci-fi movie. The only issue was, of course, the effects and how they would, be able to create them. They could be pretty unique, but a lot of the elements in the story are just now beginning to be explored by Hollywood. Like for instance, it has a world where everyone went blind, and on that world, it's on the cusp of a black hole, and so it's being sucked into a black hole, but the inhabitants don't quite know that. And that world has developed into, with technology, to accentuate their condition, right? Because they're blind, but they have technology that basically complements all that, which is the underlying idea of which is natural. That's what we do when we create technology. It complements us, and so that's the way it would develop. That's how I envisioned it would develop on another world if they had, say, a little bit of difference from us. Okay, so the duration of the story was actually originally intended because I felt like a lot of the newer generation liked to have shorter, more concise reading. And if I go back, I think like maybe I could have written a longer story, but I actually would like to write a real long version and keep the concise version as well, because it is so packed full of detail that I could easily make, it could make offshoot novels for little elements in it. I could make a whole novel out of like one of the chapters. And so basically the story could make several volumes, like Harry Potter or something. Well, I have several other books. I have one unpublished book. And I have several other books that are on the table. Though it takes time to figure out these stories. One story I have, for instance, these characters, they have extraordinary capabilities, and they aren't aware of them, that they are actually psychologically bound by different elements in their environment. And they reach out to a technical support, let's say like a philosophical support person, who then helps them break those, and then chaos ensues, because then they have to deal with their captor. And that's on the table right now. That I have several chapters written, but I don't know when I would publish that, or when I would get done with that, or whether I would even publish it. Right now, Spidersilk is the main story, but I do have those other stories, and I certainly could publish them at any time.